Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about cutting weight in powerlifting. Specifically, we're going to talk about how my cut went, what I did, why it was successful, where I ended up. We're also going to talk about how you can incorporate cutting into powerlifting for yourself. If you need to trim a little bit of fat, if you're trying to go down a weight class, we'll give you some recommendations based on the current literature on how you can do that and be more successful with that yourself. So all in all, the cut went well. I planned a period of time, and if you watch back in the Something Has to Change video, I think it was called, or It's Time for a Change, sorry, maybe Dylan will link that in the description below. You'll see that I talked a lot about how much my hip hurt and how I felt like I was getting fluffy, and it just was time to kind of change things up and focus on some different things. Now, throughout this last period of time, I feel like it's been a very successful off season for myself. My pain levels in my hip are at sort of an all-time low. My body composition has gotten a lot better, and even through the cut, my bench was progressing to near PR levels. I hit a single at 175 kilograms at an 8, which puts me right about that 182.5 kilo mark, which is what I hit at Worlds, my most recent bench PR. Normally when I start cutting, my bench just goes immediately into the dumpster, and that wasn't the case this time, so I'm pretty happy about that. The biggest reason that I did this cut was simply to ensure that the next time I go up to 108 kilos or so for competition purposes, that I'm a little bit leaner and can carry a little bit more muscle mass. There was a really cool study done recently showing that those who carried more muscle mass in their weight class were often more successful, believe it or not. I mean, I know that probably comes as no shock to anyone, but maximizing body composition can become a more and more important thing the further you get into your powerlifting career. Now, I'm not going for the club shreds here. I don't think there are many natural athletes for whom it's worthwhile to do that excessive of a cut, to get down to that low of body fat levels, to get YouTube lean, as Dylan called it earlier today. So I'm pretty happy with how far I've come. And the leanness that I've achieved. I think in terms of a strength athlete, I'm happy with this body composition, and hopefully I can maintain it pretty well as I move on my way back up. And maybe we'll update you guys when we get there and compare that to where I was when I was at 105.8 at the beginning of this. So that kind of takes us right into the numbers here. Let's get a little bit more in depth with it in terms of the actual numbers and body composition change as far as the metrics or the anthropometrics of my body and how things have changed. So in July, when we started this cut or started counting macros, I was at 105.8 kilos, and this morning I weighed in at 101.5. So that's a loss of about 4.3 kilos or 9.5 pounds, give or take. My waist was at 40.5 inches, and yes, this is super Canadian to use kilograms and then inches for measurements, but hey, we're Canadian, that's what we're gonna do. So my waist went from 40.5 inches down to 37.75 inches, so it's a loss of 2.75 inches, which I think is pretty substantial, specifically when we're talking about body fat loss. My chest measurement went from 47.5 inches to 49 inches, which may be a lapse in measurement. We did have a couple comments on the Is Sumo Deadlift Cheating video about how trash Dylan is at using tape measures. But we're not exactly sure what that discrepancy would have been from. It is entirely possible that I did put a little bit of muscle on my chest during this time. My bench, like I said, went really well this block, and I wasn't really putting too much into my squat and deadlift because I was rehabbing, so there's potential that there was actually some growth there. My flaccid bicep started off at 15.5 inches, and today it was 14.5 inches. So I lost a full inch on my arms relaxed, which is unsurprising given that my arms are probably mostly fat and are just really small to start off with. My bicep erect was 17 to start and 16.75 inches to end. So it's also entirely possible that yes, I just carry a lot of fat on my arms. Because when relaxed there was not a lot of, when relaxed there was a big difference. When flexed there was not much difference in size. And my quad went from 27.5 inches to 28 inches, which was a gain of 0.5 inches. Again, I think I was just maybe pretty detrained when we took these initial measurements. I was feeling really soggy. It was after taking some time off after Worlds and really not counting macros or training properly or any of that kind of stuff. So I think that a lot of body composition changes happened in a lot of good ways. So as of right now, my food is back up. I noticed yesterday that Mark sent me my new macros, and I'm starting to eat back up again. I'm gonna be getting back into equipment, back into training, and back into gaining some weight this coming week. Maybe, like I said earlier, maybe we'll update you guys once I'm living my thickest life once again. But that's pretty much the progress. I want to take a minute out of this video and specifically send a big shout out and thank you to Mark Morris at Polyhealth. Hopefully Dylan will link his website in the description somewhere. Mark's been hugely instrumental in guiding me through this process. I do macro check-ins with him each week, and he helps to keep me on track and update my macros and do all those kinds of things for me. He's the doctor of human nutrition. We've had on the channel a couple times. If you're interested in that, go check it out. But thank you to Mark Morris. If you guys are interested, he does do that for the general population. He works with a lot of strength and physique athletes, so go check him out, Mark Morris at Polyhealth. So the last part of this video is going to be dedicated to talking about whether or not you should cut, and if so, how should you do it best as a powerlifter or strength athlete. So there are a couple of ways that you can determine whether or not a cut would be a good idea for you. First off, if it's your first powerlifting competition, don't cut. You have no right cutting, and you're not going to gain anything from cutting for your first powerlifting meet. Unless, of course, you're using powerlifting as a weight loss tool and that's your intent for the whole thing, then by all means. But if you're an average sort of body composition person, you really have no need to cut for your first meet. Come in well eaten, well fed, well hydrated and strong, and you'll perform much, much better. We're actually just put out a video on this on our Instagram yesterday or the other day from Taylor, so check that out as well. If you are someone who is between weight classes or carries an excessive amount of body fat, then it can be useful to cut. If you are somebody who sits in between weight classes, I would say look at height differences. Look at the most competitive people in the category above and below you. Look at their heights compared to yours, and then you can get an idea of maybe where your best body composition and most competitive performances are going to happen. The last thing we're going to talk about here are some golden rules for cutting. If you are going to cut within powerlifting or within strength sports, you want to maintain as much muscle, you want to maintain as much strength as possible, you're going to follow these rules. I reached out to our good friend Dr. Mark Morris, and he was kind enough to send me over some general recommendations as backed up by the current literature. The first of these recommendations is to cut slowly. You want to aim for 0.5 to 1% of your body fat lost per week. Any more aggressive of a cut than that, and you're going to be losing more muscle mass than is optimal. The second big recommendation, or sort of golden rule of cutting, is to keep your protein intake nice and high. You want to shoot for between 2 to 3 grams per kilogram of lean body mass. Now, if you, like myself, don't have access to a DEXA scan or some sort of very accurate way to measure your body fat, to be safe, I would shoot for 2 to 3 grams per 1.5 to 2 kilograms of body weight. Another thing to keep in mind that is very important is to keep your dietary fat intake no lower than 20% of your overall calories, while filling in the rest with carbohydrates, keeping carbs as high as possible while staying within the deficit and following those first few rules. Now, if you can make sense of all that and turn all of that into a macro plan, manipulate it as needed weekly, you should be in a good place to cut, lose a little bit of body fat, and maintain your strength quite well. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you found some value in this. Hopefully those of you who are interested in how my cut went have a sense of closure at the end of it all before I start living my thickest life. Thanks for tuning in again. Leave a like if you liked the video. Hit that subscribe button for more content, and we will see you guys in the next video. Take care.